Good afternoon and welcome to the 17th annual YMCA Key Leaders Lunch. Even though this year looks a little different, a lot of things do, and we cannot gather together in person, we are excited to have you here and connect virtually. I'm Deborah Ferguson, co-anchor of NBC5 Today, and I'm so thrilled to be here with you and definitely look forward to hearing from the great lineup of speakers that we have for this year's luncheon. Let me start out too by saying thank you for your support and thank you for dedicating this time of the day to join us for this event. Support from the community has helped the YMCA strengthen the foundation of the communities it serves throughout North Texas since 1885. You know, at NBC5, we have a little saying that we like to do in the mornings. It's a little segment called Wake Up to Something Good. And that's what the Y does across North Texas and so many other areas. It brings something good into the lives of communities, and that is something that is worth celebrating. The Y is a nonprofit like no other. That is because in 10,000 neighborhoods across the nation and 21 communities right here in North Texas, it has the presence and partnerships to not just promise, but deliver positive change. November will mark 135 years that the Y has been listening and responding to our communities, nurturing the potential of kids, promoting healthy living, and fostering a sense of social responsibility. For the Y this year, of course, responding to the needs of the community meant pivoting to serve those impacted by the devastating effects of COVID-19. And as COVID-19 left people without food, childcare, and created a blood shortage, the Y was there to support the North Texas community. Listen to some of these numbers. I'm a reporter. I'm into news and facts. So listen to some of these numbers. The Y has distributed food to more than 19,000 people, provided 30,000 diapers and 1,100 packages of wipes, provided emergency child care with more than 3,800 kid visits, distributed 450 computers to children who need them in order to learn, and hosted 9 blood drives. And that support will continue as long as there is a need. Good work so far by the Y. Give yourselves a pat on the back if you're out there. Definitely a round of applause for that too. Right now we want to take a moment to learn more about how the YMCA has served the local community during this difficult time.
While we've been apart during this crisis, the Y family has come together and is stronger than ever before. We opened our branches to provide emergency childcare so people could go to work, put food on the shelves, care for the sick, fight fires, and serve and protect. We are distributing much-needed food, hosting critical blood drives, connecting students to computers, providing online education from preschool to high school, helping isolated seniors with groceries, prescriptions, and friendship. All of this is possible because of our Y staff, members, donors, and volunteers. For 135 years, the YMCA has served the Dallas community, and thanks to you, we'll keep serving, together and stronger than ever.
Alongside the side of your screen, you will see those who made today's luncheon possible. You can click on each of these organizations to learn more about them. And thank you to all of our sponsors. All right, now as we move through the program, I am pleased to introduce to you the president and the CEO of the Dallas YMCA, Kurt Hazelbaker. Let me tell you a little bit about this guy. He has spent his 30-plus year career with the YMCA. Kurt started his YMCA career in 1983 as a day camp counselor at the YMCA of Metropolitan Dallas. He served in a variety of positions at that Y, rising to Vice President of Operations before leaving to join the YMCA of Northwest North Carolina in March 2003 as Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, and later served as the organization's President and CEO. Kurt spent 13 years in North Carolina before coming back to where he started his career in Dallas to accept the position of President of CEO, a role in which he has served since January 2017. So now, my friends, a big virtual welcome to Kurt.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today, and Deborah, thank you for your introduction. It's hard to believe that we're in October already, in a year unlike any we've seen in our lifetime. If we think back to March, none of us could have predicted where we'd be today. On March 16th, we closed all of our Y facilities for the first time in our 135-year history. We didn't know how long it would last, but it turned out to be just shy of 3 months. We had momentous plans for 2020. A new strategic plan, we broke ground on the Lake Highlands YMCA renovation and expansion project, and our board of directors was about to approve a multi-million-dollar comprehensive campaign. Overnight, that all came to a halt. But even though the doors to our branches closed, we knew we had to continue to support our community. We would need to find new ways to serve outside the walls of our branches where people needed us the most. The Y's mission includes ensuring we keep our community healthy in spirit, mind, and body. When people are in need, the Y is always there. Thanks to our amazing staff, volunteers, and partners, we quickly began to provide emergency child care to essential workers, wellness checks and grocery delivery to seniors, meals to those in need, and blood drives to support local hospitals. I am so proud that even through difficult times, the Y stepped up to serve others. The YMCA had a good reputation in the community pre-COVID, and I believe it has gotten even stronger. We are being seen as a solution provider, and it's been confirmed in the more than $1 million in philanthropic support we have received since the beginning of the pandemic. In addition to funding, we've developed new partnerships that will benefit the Y and the communities we serve for the foreseeable future. There was an expectation by leaders in our community that we step up, and I think we exceeded those expectations. Thank you to each of you that had a role in this work. In June, we strategically reopened our facilities using a phased approach. During the time we were closed, we spent a great deal of time and energy to put the health and safety of our members and our guests as our top priority. When Y's reopened in June, we needed them to be as safe as possible. All areas inside the Y were evaluated and redesigned to help ensure social distancing. We spaced out equipment and limited capacity in classes so everyone has the recommended 6 feet of space. We dedicated staff to sanitize equipment after use, as well as provided ample amounts of disinfectant wipes for wiping down equipment. These safety measures continue so our members can feel confident that the Y is a safe place to exercise and stay healthy. We'd love to hear words of encouragement from our members. I'll share one member's testimonial. I think it's important to stick to the Y because, at least for me, and I know for a lot of other people, the Y has always been a part of the community. I think one of the most exciting things about when I came back to the Y when it reopened, believe it or not, was the camaraderie. It's not like some gym where you go and lift weights and head out. The Y represents family, it represents togetherness, and it represents community to me. I want to thank all of our members for staying with the Y. If you're like me, you're probably tired of hearing the phrase, the new normal. Many of us are still trying to define what our new normal looks like as we continue to adapt to the current world around us. One of the hardest parts of the pandemic that has affected me personally has been the impact to our staff. We had to close 3 branches, and we have a much smaller team serving people than years past. We're expecting it to take 4 or 5 years to recover the revenue we have lost this year. But I can tell you that the board and I are not letting that stop us. We are focused on a new plan to grow post-COVID and meet the needs that are still in our communities, and in many cases that have been magnified by COVID. We have a bold vision for a brighter future ahead. Earlier this summer, our board of directors approved a $31 million comprehensive campaign focused on renovating the Park South YMCA, renovating and expanding the Moreland Family YMCA at Oak Cliff, providing funds for mental health and safety around water programming, growing the annual campaign, and raising funds for the long term for the Wise Endowment. I'm excited for the long-term impact we'll be able to make in these communities by serving more people. We've also been focusing on innovative ways to expand our reach in the community. While our Y has realized many advancements regarding diversity, like many organizations, I thought we could do better. Rodriga Ross has recently been promoted to the role of Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Rod is the right person to lead our efforts, and I'm excited for her to share what she'll be focusing on in the months ahead. We also launched our Y Learning Academy for the 2021 school year, a face-to-face program designed to support students who are remote learning through their school district. As several districts continue to provide a remote learning option for school, there are many parents who must go to work in person or cannot teach their children at home during the day. The Y is here to support parents who need that help. In November, the YMCA at Metropolitan Dallas will celebrate its 135th anniversary. At this pivotal moment in not only our Y's history, but our nation's history, we must continue to find innovative, bold ways to attain what brighter futures ahead. One of the biggest takeaways from this pandemic is that we can serve communities inside and outside of our facilities. In fact, some of the most impactful work we do is when we get outside of our walls into the community. We have partnerships with Royce City, Irving, and Salina, where we can be there to serve kids through after-school care, youth sports, and health and wellness programs. We have newer areas in our entire service area that are growing at a rapid pace. We plan to come out strong post-COVID to expand our offerings and serve those growing communities. Our world has been turned upside down, and I want to thank those that have stepped up when needed. Please continue to take care of yourselves, wear your mask, practice social distancing, and wash your hands. Prioritize your mental health and wellness. Stay connected with your friend network and exercise your body. If this is your first time hearing more about the Y, I encourage you to visit our website to learn more. Thank you for your continued support of the YMCA. Stay safe and healthy.
Our next speaker is Jill Magnuson, the board chair of the YMCA of Metropolitan Dallas. Jill serves as Director of External Affairs of the Nasher Sculpture Center, a world-renowned museum in the Dallas Arts District, and is the second female board chair in the Dallas Y's history. So now let's hear from Jill and how she is focused on leading the Y with compassion during these extraordinary times.
I really hope that at this moment in time where the world is asking us to rethink things and to be really intentional about our work and our purpose and to not just do things to do things, I think this time is more important than ever before for us to really get behind that and to think about our purpose at the YMCA and how we're serving our community. So my son was about 3 years old and we had already been going through Y programs, and a volunteer at the Town North YMCA asked if I would serve on the board, and that really began my Y career and the passion that I live for today. The Y's growth strategy for the future looked very different 6 months ago than it does today, but it's no less important. And I think now, rather than our ability to truly grow through brick and mortar, it's more important, and we have the foundation for this, to be growing in other creative ways to serve our community. I hope that we can further advance our initiatives in diversity and inclusion as a very, very beginning. I know we've done such good work, but there's more to do. I hope that we can continue to meet our community right now that is really struggling with the divide and racial equality, the economic divide. And then I'm really, really passionate about the concern that our community has with education and what this epidemic is going to be happening to our young people and their mental health. Those are all things that I think the Y is so perfectly positioned to be able to help with our community. Many of those ways are going to be outside of our walls. Many of those ways are going to be partnering with other organizations such as hospitals and organizations that are dedicated to causes like mental wellness. And so I'm excited because I think this is our moment to grow, and this is our moment to serve even more of our community because they need us and they need the programs that we've established. So leading with compassion is really the way I wake up every morning. One of my favorite sayings is, be the change you wish to be in this world. Good afternoon, and thank you for being a part of the 2020 YMCA Virtual Key Leaders Luncheon. It's an honor to represent an organization like the Y, especially at this historic time. Now, more than ever before, I believe it's important that we think about our purpose as an organization and how we can lead with compassion by serving our community and providing for others who need a helping hand during this health crisis and beyond. Our community obviously has been negatively impacted by COVID-19, and our YMCA has too. Yet with that negative impact, we are rallying to continue to serve the growing needs of the community in new ways. The Metropolitan Dallas YMCA has stepped up in the ways we can. Staff, volunteers, donors, and partners have helped serve the community through food distribution, blood drives, grab-and-go meals, household essentials, childcare, and supplemental learning support. Food insecurity is a need that has been magnified during the pandemic as people have suffered loss of income. Through ongoing support from the community, the YMCA has been able to serve more than 267,000 pounds of food to more than 15,000 people right here in North Texas since the beginning of this crisis. This is truly our moment to grow and to serve more of our community. You heard our president talk about how the board and leadership are focused on what the Y looks like during post-COVID and how we can expand the services we offer. So rather than growing by physical locations, it's more important now to grow through new ways within our community through the services that we can uniquely provide. We have laid this foundation for that growth during this pandemic, and now the Y is ready to double down to meet the needs of the community, whether it's economic-based needs, education needs, mental wellness needs. We will continue to expand our services we offer by partnering with organizations to serve more youth and families. For example, we promote water safety year-round and teach thousands of children to swim each spring and summer, including in underserved communities where the classes are offered free of charge. I will echo Kurt's comments that we need to be bold, and we can by not only serving kids in this area, but by being a leader in eliminating childhood drowning. It's ambitious, but we believe that the Y has the reach, the partnerships, and the expertise to make this happen. Let me repeat, we need to eliminate childhood drownings. Now, next, I am so pleased to introduce you all to a dear friend and wonderful servant leader for the Y, Rodriga Ross. Rod, as we like to call her, serves as Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and leads our Catalyst Initiative, COVID-19 Community Response. Rod?
There comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. Bishop Desmond Tutu. I'm Rodriga Ross, Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Dallas County has declared racism a public health crisis. The area is home to about 2.6 million residents, of which 63% are people of color. According to a recent resolution by the Commissioner's Court, Dallas County's Black residents have a higher propensity to be unemployed, live in under-resourced communities, and have children that attend low-performing or under-budgeted public schools. Due to the historical systems and policies, many of these residents live south of I-30, which divides an already segregated city of Dallas even more. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, but I made it to Texas as fast as I could, or at least that's what they say in these parts. When I was a toddler, I was always curious and asked why a lot. Even today, at the center of most of my decisions and strategies, inquiries, reactions, and choices lies the why question. For the past 22 years, discovery has been at the core of the work I've done in marginalized and under-resourced communities at the YMCA. In service to the specific needs of this population, I help lead the charge in providing food, household essentials, child care, early learning in preschool, after-school teen leadership development, college awareness, family engagement, and safety programs. Through my work over the years, my desire to answer why seemed to intensify, fueled by the fact that the work that was being done was being accessed by more and more people year over year. Why do people in North Dallas seem to have more opportunity than those in Southern Dallas? Why do children in the area graduate high school at a lesser rate than their peers in the northern parts of Dallas? Why are food deserts rampant in Southern Dallas? With great difficulty, I had to concede that even after 50 plus years of civil rights movement and activity, racism was alive, well, and thriving, and that was the answer to my why. Social upheaval is being magnified by the impact of COVID-19 as people become intimately aware of the inherent racist intricacies that exist in every public system in this country. This 400-year-old dilemma has also resulted in organizations, corporations, and businesses having internal systems that do the same. Now more than ever, it is not just required that people and organizations move towards not being racist, but they must actively seek to be anti-racist. It is the difference between saying, I personally don't throw trash in the streets, and saying it is totally unacceptable for anyone to throw trash in the streets. All internal and external sets of principles and procedures, rules and arrangements that work to get things done or work to keep things from happening should be evaluated. The dismantling of inequitable systems will require people who are, one, allies. Allies accept that there is a system of privilege that exists that allows certain demographics to fare better than others and accept invitations from marginalized populations to learn more and do more. Two, amplifiers. Amplifiers make louder the needs and concerns of marginalized populations, especially when they are not present to do so themselves. And three, accomplices. Accomplices embody the language of activism by deliberately participating in the dismantling of systems that oppress, even those steeped in tradition. Society's current levels of consciousness are fueling a renaissance requiring a deeper level of commitment to the eradication, education, and emancipation. The Y is committing to be anti-racist by deepening our understanding of the impact of race, unconscious bias, and privilege. This is a long and arduous journey, but it provides the opportunity for us to join together and be a part of an upstream moment. Thank you to all of our partners who have supported our COVID-19 Catalyst Initiative work.
We're going to take a 5-minute break now so that you can network with others if you haven't had the opportunity. So please take this time to find a new table to join and meet a new connection. Welcome back, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today, Ann Chow, the Chief Executive Officer of AT&T Business. Ann was appointed Chief Executive Officer of AT&T Business in September 2019. She and her organization of more than 30,000 employees are responsible for serving nearly 3 million business customers in upwards of 200 countries and territories around the world. AT&T Business customers span all industries, including the public sector, as well as nearly all of the world's Fortune 1000 companies. She is a trailblazer, the first woman to hold this position and the first woman of color CEO in AT&T's history. Ann is passionate about education, diversity and inclusion, advancing women in technology, and cultivating next-generation leaders. Her many contributions to business and the community are widely recognized. A few of Ann's awards and accolades include Most Inspiring Woman in Comms by Light Reading and Gold Stevie Award as Female Executive of the Year Business Services. Most recently, she was named to Fortune magazine's 10 Powerful Women on Your Radar list and Future 50 North Texas Innovators and Disruptors You Need to Know. I read the profile about her a few months ago in the Dallas Morning News and thought, yeah, this is a woman we all need to know. So pleased, so proud to ask you to join me in welcoming Ann Chow. And thank you for sharing your wonderful experience and background with us today.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Deborah, for that lovely, lovely introduction. It is my honor and great pleasure to be here as part of the Key Leaders Lunch in support of the YMCA Metro Dallas, and special thanks to Kurt and his entire team for having me. First of all, let me say on behalf of all of AT&T that I hope everyone here who is tuning in is staying safe and healthy and taking good care of yourself and your loved ones. For today's discussion, what I thought I'd do is spend a couple of moments talking about this topic that has become so important, I think, in our lives here, that has come to life even so much more so during this pandemic. And that is, how do we as people, how do we as colleagues, as a community, come together to belong? And to start out with, I am a little bit about myself. I'm a new, relatively new transplant to Dallas. I've lived now in this community for just a little over 5 years. And so I don't know a lot of you yet, but I'm very much looking forward to meeting so many of you. And I do thank you all for taking the time to provide your support to the YMCA for all the great work that they do. Also want to give a special shout out to all of the amazing support of the community that the YMCA has done throughout COVID, especially in those early days in support of first responders and essential workers. There's nothing more important than supporting those who are enabling and supporting life itself. And so special thanks again to the YMCA. So let me start first by talking a little bit about my journey of becoming so that we can get introduced. And I'll share with you a little bit about my thought process on why belonging, because I do believe that organizations like the Y, and especially the Y, are all about creating an environment for belonging, not only for our youth, but for all members across the community and across society. So I would be remiss if I didn't start with sharing a little bit about my becoming journey. And it, of course, for me starts, like with so many of us, with my parents. My parents immigrated to the United States in the 1960s. They came to the United States with less than $500 to their name. Why did they come to America? They came to America because this was a place that hope lived. And they knew that if they came to this country, that their past would not dictate their future. And they knew that you could become anything that you aspired to be as long as you worked hard enough. And so I am a proud second-generation American. I was born here. I was actually born in the Midwest in the great state of Missouri, so I am a show-me girl. And after my dad finished grad school in Missouri, we moved to New Jersey. And he got his very first job at the world-famous Bell Laboratories. So you can see that communications and AT&T is a little bit in my blood. I grew up, and my brother and I grew up. I have one younger brother. who is now a physician, we grew up in a very classic immigrant upbringing. I would tell you we didn't have a lot of material things, but what we did have was an incredible family unit that placed immense value on education and on community. One of the great lessons that my parents taught me that has really moved me through my entire life is that education and learning are the foundation of everything. And if you take a step back and you think about it, your education and your learning and your skills and your experiences are really the only thing that you have that cannot be taken away from you. And so the power of what the Y does, I'm going to make a correlation here as I will throughout my comments, to the learning academies that this organization provides to children and to others are so profound because they are part of each individual's becoming journey. I would be remiss if I didn't share with you a little bit about my Y story. So as a young child in middle class America in New Jersey, I was a Girl Scout, and I'm actually a proud lifetime member of the Girl Scout now as an adult. And as a Girl Scout, my first encounter with the Y was camping. So when we used to go on camping trips, we would go to Y camps, in the state of New Jersey. And so when I think back on my own childhood, my first forays into camping, which by the way, I am not a great camper, that's probably not a surprise to you. I think about how hard I worked to earn that camping badge as part of my Girl Scout experience, and that will always stay with me. And so I'm so grateful for that. Growing up, we grew up with a very simple type of upbringing, all about education. I had the opportunity to go to Cornell University for college, and I also studied at the Juilliard pre-college division when I was younger, thinking that I wanted to be a classical pianist when I grew up. But I realized that what I wanted to do was have a bigger impact somehow on society, and music was probably not the way. So of course I went and I became an engineer. From a family perspective, I am the proud parent of two daughters. One of them goes to Georgia Tech, another one goes to the University of Michigan. They have their own Y story, by the way. Both of my children learned how to swim at the Y, and so I am so grateful for those life skills that they learned. And there is nothing more important, right? When you think about being able to survive and knowing how to have basic swim capabilities, the Y played such a critical role for them, as I know it does so many out in the community. So that's a little bit about my personal background. Next slide, please. So from a professional perspective, I am the CEO of AT&T Business. I just celebrated this year my 30 service year anniversary with AT&T. It's hard to imagine that I have been here for 30 years. And if I reflect back on that journey thus far, I have had 17 different jobs, 26 different bosses, and about 50% of my time has been spent in roles in front of clients. And I want to take a moment to say again, thank you to the YMCA for being a wonderful client of ours, and to so many of you out in the audience for also being customers of AT&T. We are here to support you in any way that we can. When I reflect back on this journey that I've had and the opportunities that I've been given, my commitment to business and to the community has really been about this intersection about technology and people. And one of the reasons why I have stayed at AT&T for so long, through decades, if you will, through incredible technology and industry shifts, is that technology plays such a vital role in society. Think for a moment what this global pandemic would have been like if we didn't have the ability to connect. Okay? And I often say that I wish that the phrase would have been coined at the front end of the pandemic to not be social distancing, but really it's physical distancing. Because I would argue that we now more than ever need social connection in a way that is profound, in a way that will ensure that we work through this pandemic together, as well as the other crises we face. We sit here, and Kurt mentioned this in his comments, we sit here at an unprecedented time, at the inflection point of three major crises: the pandemic, the economic recession on a global basis, as well as here in the United States, systemic racism and social injustice. Right? And I am proud to live in a community, and Dallas County was one of the very first counties and largest ones to declare racism and social injustice a public health crisis. So here we sit at this incredible moment in time. And from my vantage point, a little bit about the role that I have today, I'm responsible for a unit that has over $36 billion of revenue, serves upwards of 3 million clients all around the country and all around the globe. We provide them with critical connectivity-based solutions to enable their businesses to thrive, to operate, right, to communicate. It is a role that I cherish, that I'm grateful to have, and I'm responsible directly for over 30,000 employees across the world. And so that's a little bit about the day job I have. And so my vantage point on business, on the opportunity set which sits in front of us, is perhaps a little bit unique because I have been working with clients for the vast duration of my career. When I look at this point in time that we're in, there is no question that technology will play a key role, and that together across the different sectors, we must come together to ensure that we create an environment for belonging and that we help to advance our communities and society. A couple of thoughts about becoming to belonging. This notion of belonging struck me, I would tell you, pretty early in my career. I am obviously a woman of color, and there were not many people who looked like me as I was going through the corporate ranks. And so I felt so strongly because with my parents, I came from an environment where there was a cultural divide with my parents, there was a generational divide, there was also a language divide. So for me, I was always acutely attuned to the fact that belonging to something, whether it's a family unit, a community, a team, an organization, a company, was something that was really, really important. And it is really so much of what each of us simply want for ourselves, our children, our loved ones, as well as for the next generation of leaders who will continue to run the world, if you will. Part of my passion at AT&T has been to be able to create organizations and movements and initiatives which create this sense of belonging for others. I'm an executive sponsor of several of our employee groups. Inspiration is one that is focused on the Asian community. I championed and created an AT&T Women of Business, which now has almost 5,000 members around the world. And that organization, that employee network, is one that is focused on women in business, as well as other areas. If I think about our engagement and the opportunity to engage out in the community, we've got an Asian American executive network here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that I'm proud to be part of. I'm a board member at Franklin Covey, as well as having engaged in Georgia Tech in support of their student body, their parent network, as well as in support of their president. Next page, please. So as I think about the opportunity for us, right, and what the Y really embodies is creating places, creating experiences of belonging for so many. This becomes vitally important as we think about moving forward together. I believe that there has never been a time when the private sector, the public sector, the nonprofit sector must come together in support of our collective community. After all, isn't what we're about prosperity, right? As we've moved through the peak of the crisis now, and we are moving into whatever the next normal is, and the next normal is, we are looking to move from survival to a new version of what's it mean to thrive. And we want prosperity for all people. We also want prosperity for our planet. And what the year 2020 has taught us, certainly, is that we have an opportunity as humanity to do better. A couple of other thoughts for you. I am this year's campaign chair for the United Way of Metro Dallas, and I want to say thank you again for the wonderful partnership between the Y and United Way. Many of you may have read about or have even seen the launch of Aspire 2030, where the United Way Metro Dallas is all about advancements in education, income, and health. And for my campaign year this year, my focus is on health. And I think this aligns incredibly well with where we are as a Metro Dallas community. When I think about health, it is not just about our physical health, which has come to the forefront certainly in a global pandemic, but it is about our mental health and our emotional health and our spiritual health, whatever that may mean to you. It is also about preventative health and an overall approach to well-being. And when you take a step back and you think about the opportunity set and the critical programs which are required to advance our communities, we would be remiss not to admit and acknowledge the fact that not every community is created equal. And in fact, the data shows that our communities of color, right, and our underserved communities are disproportionately negatively impacted by the pandemic. All right, and so this is what really implores us, right, as leaders in the community, to do more and to lean in harder. I've shared a couple of facts with you here around the fact that every generation that comes forward, right? I'm part of Generation X. The next generation after that is our millennials. And then there's Gen Z, which is the generation of my daughters. And then there's Gen Alpha. For Gen Z and Gen Alpha, right, every generation that moves forward becomes more and more diverse, right? So being able to tackle bias, being able to ensure that we are moving forward with a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in all facets of life becomes critical. And what these younger generations demand, what they're interested in, they are absolutely interested in climate control, right? And what's happening to the planet and Mother Earth, right? This one planet, this one home that we all share. They are interested in organizations which choose to engage, right, in doing the right thing in terms of giving back. So as it relates to the why, I would ask for each of you, you have been so kind to spend some time with us over this Leaders Luncheon, but I would ask, if you are not supporting the why directly today, I would ask that you consider please doing so, whether it is with your time, your talent, or yes, your treasure. There has never been a time when the learning academies, where the support of seniors, where the support of mental well-being, where the support of childcare, right? All of the amazing programs that the Y has and does across our community, they need our collective support. And so it is my, my honor and my pleasure to be here with all of you to share with you one of the key lessons that I've learned from my parents, and that is to be good, we must do good. All right. And so, and by the way, my mother would also say, sometimes it's good to look good. And I think there's a saying here in Texas, which is all hat, no cattle, right? So we don't want to just look good. We must be good and do good. And for sure, I truly, truly believe that our strength is in our community, right? And that is what is so wonderful about the reach, right, and the impact of the Y. And the only way that we can support our community together is if we lean in together and we give and we support each other, because there is no question that we are better together. Thank you for your time and your thoughts. I'll look forward to the next session, where I think I'm being joined for a little fireside chat.
We are so pleased to have Ann for just a little more time for some questions and answers, where she will be joined by Kelvin Walker. Kelvin is the CEO of Dallas Citizens Council, a nonprofit organization comprised of more than 150 business leaders who provide guidance on policy issues that move Dallas forward, issues like education, mobility, and quality of life. He is a longtime board member and former board chair of the YMCA of Metropolitan Dallas. Please welcome Ann and Kelvin.
And thank you for your wonderful remarks today. We're excited to have an executive of your stature be so supportive of the YMCA. And today we'd love to have just a little time to ask a few questions of you, to tease out a little bit more of what you've given us in your talk.
Sure.
I'll start first with company questions as well, then I'll move into a fair amount of the discussion you talked about with DE&I,
Sure.
and then we'll talk about family.
Absolutely.
So you run a business now. If we pulled it outside of AT&T, that would be larger than Coca-Cola, larger than Progressive Insurance, Fortune 100. In the era of COVID-19, how do you keep your finger on the pulse of your team?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Kelvin. And I think this is something that every one of my customers, right, and all of us have been a little bit struggling with, right, which is we are so used to an environment where the physical, right, our ability to physically connect with each other and get to know each other and build relationships is just foundational to what we do, right? But we can't do that right now, right? And so being in the tech business, for us, the pivot was actually quite simple, if you will, right? It is about using the technology and using the tools and ensuring kind of a mixed modality approach to communication, right? And so with my team, I'm still doing town hall meetings. I amped up my touch points to my organization. Every week they can expect an email from me that is top of mind, right? I've upped my presence on social media, right? So that my team can get a feel for what is happening and where my head's at and the things that we're working on strategically as well as with customers through those medium. And so I would say that to keep a finger on the pulse of it, you've just got to use every tool at your disposal. Try some things because not everything will work. And given the diversity of the workforce today, some will want to connect and engage with me on Twitter. Others might want to use LinkedIn. Others may want to use our own internal company social platforms, right? For others, the email touchpoint is fine. And so I think it's really incumbent upon us as the leader to adapt, to accommodate whatever it is that our teams require.
Sure, and given your global presence, how did you manage the differing countries and nations that needed different protocols for safety and different protocols for how your employees can interact? How did you manage all that on a global basis? Yeah,
it was really incredible. I mean, Kelvin, when I think about the first 90 days, they were a bunch of sleepless days and nights, and we lost track of it, quite frankly, because it was all about how do we take care of our employees first, right? Make sure that they are safe. Those that need to be out in the field because they are out providing customer services and doing, restoring services and things, that they had the PPE that they needed. And then it was also in parallel working that for our customers, right? Every one of our customers had to pivot to a remote environment, many on a global scale, right? You think about the financial industry. They had to figure out how to enable tens of thousands of people on a global scale. And so through AT&T's network and the products and services that AT&T provides, we were able to do that. We had, in those first 90 days-ish, we had over 16,000 requests come in for our customers, from our customers, to ask for unique configurations, different types of services to enable their business. And we probably broke every process that there was to get services up, services that would normally take weeks or months to turn up. We did it in days because we had to, right? And so, we are now working with many of our clients to understand what is the next phase of what they need, now that we've moved past that intense crisis, into a little bit more of an informed strategic lens on what the future could hold.
And when you think about the last 12 months, you were new in the job last fall with a plan, and then all of a sudden here comes COVID-19. How do you feel about the rest of this year and as we move forward? Particularly, I want to ask you in the lens of a woman and a woman of color, how you lead and manage your teams and provide that example for those who are looking to you to see how to lead.
So it's hard to imagine that it's been a year. It feels like maybe many, many dog years, perhaps, right? In terms of how long it's been since I've gotten this job, and started this job. So a couple of things. Where we are today, when I think about how we launched into this year, we actually had this prophetic theme, and it was we are at the dawn of a new decade. All right. Little did we know, though, what that dawn of the new decade would be, right? 2020 is a year that will go down in infamy for a whole host of reasons. But I am a person who believes that everything happens for a reason. Sometimes you just don't see it at the time, right? And the goodness of what has come out of these crises is an acceleration of e-commerce, is an acceleration of technology enabling businesses, right? And the acceleration of the notion of distance learning, the acceleration of telemedicine, right? All of these things, many of them will not go back to the way it was, and they shouldn't. Right? But what is so exciting about where we are right now is that none of us have any idea what the future is going to hold, right? And we're all on common ground, right? With respect to that. I also think that, from a woman of color's lens, right? And I can't assert what it might like not to have that lens just because simply it's who I am, right? Throughout my life, throughout my career, I've led with authenticity, with a unique voice because simply there were just not a lot of people like me, right? And I think that's been good at times, and then other times it's been more challenging. But to this day, and this is one of the reasons why I have stayed at AT&T for 30 years, is that I've never compromised my values or my commitment to my customers or my people or my business. And I think in times of crisis, it's even more critical for leaders to demonstrate a level of compassion and empathy, right? And consistency and calm, in addition to all of the other attributes that we expect from great leaders, courage and great communications and things of that sort. But I think in times like this, in times like these, your people have to know that you care, right? And it's not that tough choices won't be made, because they will always have to be made. But if you can handle them with grace and respect and a level of transparency and authenticity, look, we're all adults, right? Yeah. We can work through it. We can work through it together. And so those are some of the things that I've found.
And lastly, with the pandemic, we've noticed that it's created and highlighted disparities.
Yes.
A lot of disparities, both from the internet, from opportunities for healthcare, or the access to healthcare. And as we think about the inclusion part, particularly, I'm thinking about your comments of belonging and becoming.
Yes.
The inclusion part of DE&I. How do you see that we as a community should think more deeply about inclusion for the betterment of the Dallas community? Yeah,
absolutely. So you're going to hear a little bit of Annisms here,
sure.
Okay?
Bring them on.
Because this is almost a little bit of a piece of enlightenment, might be too strong of a word, but a perspective as I've evolved my view of DEI. And that is, we've all heard about diversity and inclusion, and we've all known that, it's important, right? It's important because the demographic of the country is changing, the demographic of our state and our community is changing, and we want to harness talent wherever it is, right? We want to make progress in every facet of society. But when you think about it, inclusion is not enough, okay? Why? Inclusion implies that one person decides to include another. That's actually not good enough, right? What we all really want is a culture and an environment where everybody belongs. Every person's voice matters. Everyone has equal opportunity and equal access to healthcare or education, right? We know there's the digital divide. We know there's a homework gap out there. We know that our communities of color, right, are disproportionately impacted, right? That there was a gap before, and now the gap is even bigger, right? Whether it's food insecurity, or whether it's income, right? Income pressures, right? So what we have to do as a community, no matter which sector you're part of, is I think we've got to open our minds and our hearts in a much more profound way. Okay, we have to really listen and engage in a very, very different way. The difference between it's almost like the difference between compassion and empathy, right? We need to all develop more empathy, which is, I can try to figure out how to walk a mile in your shoes, even though I never have, right? But I'm going to try to do that. In order to do that, Kelvin, I would say, and this gets to a book that I am a co-author of that's going to come out next month, and that is about unconscious bias. I actually have a fundamental belief that bias is one of the reasons why we struggle so much, whether it's our conscious biases or unconscious bias. And I'm here to say that bias is just simply part of the human condition. And so we all have it. So we need to just figure out how to talk about it, because that unconscious bias is what holds us back.
Sure. Sure.
And I would tell you, as a woman of color, right, as someone who didn't see many role models throughout my career that looked like me or sounded like me, if we don't surface that unconscious bias, it will always be there, and it'll fester, and it'll work against us, right?
Absolutely.
And I have learned that most bias does not sit in a place of racism. Most bias doesn't sit in a place of malicious intent. It sits in a place of lack of exposure, lack of understanding, right? Lack of openness, right? Lack of courage, if you will, right? And fear. And so, and I'm not saying that there's not 5% bad actors out there. There will always be, right? But the root of bias actually doesn't sit in that, is in my experience. And so I feel so strongly that each of us have to lean in harder, have to take further steps forward. And in my mind, it is the leader's job to be the one who is more flexible, more adaptable, more agile, to reach out. And that is what leadership is all about.
And you've done so with your employee resource groups that you've started. And when you think about your journey first woman of color to run AT&T Business or be CEO of a division like this. How do you work toward ensuring, although you're the first, that you won't be the last?
Yeah. You took one of my favorite lines out of my mouth, right? Which is that I don't mind being the first. It's certainly it's certainly an honor to be the first, but I never want to be the only, and for a dang sure, I don't want to be the last. Right. And so my mission, and this is heavily fueled by the fact that I have two young daughters, right? I'm heavily incented by and fueled by the next generation of leaders, right? I fundamentally believe that it is our jobs to make sure that this world is a better place, right? Because we were in it, and that the next generation of leaders can take it even further and make even more progress. And that is quite simply what fuels me, right? To the extent that my story or my journey, my failures and my successes, my learnings can help somebody else, I am all about that, you know? And if it can just simply inspire or support one person, then to me it's worth it, you know? Then it's totally worth it, because change happens one person at a time, you know. And for you and the rest of the board at the Y and Kurt and his leadership team, this is what makes organizations like the Y so incredibly powerful, right? Because you are focused on the individual, whether it's the child, the senior, the mother, right?
Absolutely.
You know, the first responder, and you're taking one person at a time to provide services and support that are so vital. And that could completely change that individual's trajectory, you know? And we just have to take every moment and every opportunity and every relationship and think of it that way, right? So
your energy is contagious, very contagious. I want to quickly move to, I think about your career, engineer, graduate degree from Cornell as well. You've also been many different roles at AT&T, but you're also an accomplished musician, Juilliard, and also you are a boxer. I want to hear about both of those things before we wrap up. So tell me first about your experiences in Juilliard and how that informed what you wanted to do later, and then after that I have to hear about the boxing gyms.
About my Dallas learned passion, I should say. Okay.
Yes.
So first on Juilliard. So I went to the Juilliard pre-college division, which is something that happens before college, before the university level. And I was fortunate enough to audition and get in when I was 10 years old. And I had this dream that I wanted to perform in Carnegie Hall. All right. Come high school, I realized that I was good, but I was not great. I was assessing what college might be like, and in my peak, I was practicing 6 hours a day as a child, okay? Which basically meant that I was doing nothing else but going to school and practicing. And when I looked at kids in college, they were practicing 12 hours a day without a certain outcome, all right? Again, now, I'm a child of immigrants. I need certainty for financial security and contribution, okay?
Certainly.
Right?
Yes.
And so I realized that while I loved music, it was not going to be a career for me. But one of the things that I learned that was really powerful about being a musician is that there are, and again, as the child of immigrants, the more languages you know, the more people you can relate to, right? And I learned that music is a universal language. It transcends culture. It transcends ethnicity. It transcends many things, right? I would also say, this is the engineer in me, math is also a universal language, okay? This is what I tell my kids, right? So if you can be a musician, you're good at math, and hey, the bonus, this would not be me or my children, but if you know a bunch of software languages, right, they also transcend culture, country, right? And just, so the more languages you know, the better off you are, right? Okay. So that's a little bit about my musical background.
Now tell me about this boxing.
The boxing thing.
I heard you talking about boxing. I got a little nervous. Made sure we had a little distance here. So.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the great. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a confession here. Is when we moved to Dallas a couple years back, 5 years ago. We came here, and a move. For those of you who have moved, moves are very stressful. When you have kids, they're even more stressful.
Absolutely.
New job, everything. I was in actually terrible shape. Okay, so I was rolling up on a major milestone birthday in the worst shape of my life. And I'm a Grouponer, big couponer. So I was looking for what is it that the Dallas community could offer in terms of exercise, community, and whatnot. And I tried a bunch of different things. Yoga was not for me, bar was not for me, whatever. And I found fitness boxing, and I love it. It is my favorite thing to do outside of work. If I could go every day, and there was a time that I did go every day, and then I tore my rotator cuff because I'm old, I love it. And the reason why I love it is that it is incredibly empowering. And when you can work yourself, think about my paradigm for health, right? It's not just physical health. When you can work yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally, which all of those three things are engaged when you are boxing, either against, working with a trainer or against the bag, you cannot waver in terms of your physical commitment, your mental or your emotional focus on it, right? And so it's literally changed my life, right? And I thank the move to Dallas. And by the way, a little plug for Title Boxing Club in Plano and Title Boxing Club in Uptown, which are my two favorite places to go.
I mean, I could never have, if I thought of all the things, I would say boxer, not boxer, but that's a great way to stay in shape, stay healthy. I know we're running out of time here, but I want to thank you for all of your leadership in Dallas. Thank you for the opportunities you provide for others, because the doors that you continue to open are doors that others just like you will walk through. And I think it means a lot and very impactful for our YMCA members and our friends and partners to be able to see a leader like you who can also talk about your personal experiences, but also speak very forthrightly about diversity and equity and inclusion and race and racism. And this has been a great discussion, and we really, really, really appreciate your time and look forward to all of your successes in the future.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be with all of you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today for the YMCA's 2020 virtual Key Leaders Luncheon. If you'd like to learn more about the YMCA and the work it's doing throughout their community, please visit ymcadallas.org. Thanks once again for being with us today. We hope to see you in person at next year's Key Leaders event.